Great Zimbabwe stands as one of the world's most fascinating ancient architectural marvels. Like the famed Göbekli Tepe, it has sparked intrigue and is surrounded by an enduring mystery over its enigmatic origins and cultural significance. Were the Great Zimbabwe ruins truly engineered by the Shona, or is there evidence to suggest otherwise? As we shall soon see, there are alternative theories that Middle Eastern, South Asian, or even European builders may have created the ruins as a fortress to protect precious metals. Zimbabwe, a natural wonderland. Zimbabwe lies at the heart of southern Africa, spanning diverse landscapes that range from the expansive savannas and fertile river valleys to the dramatic eastern highlands with their rugged mountainous terrain. This landlocked nation boasts breathtaking natural beauty, including the iconic Victoria Falls and the wildlife-rich plains of its national parks. AfricaGeographic.com. The baobab tree is a strange-looking tree that grows in low-lying areas on the African mainland. Baobabs store large volumes of water in their trunks. Continuing, humans utilize baobabs for many purposes, including shelter, ceremonies, food, medicine, fiber, juices, and beer. Note aside, the baobabs have done significant damage to the fortress. Zimbabwe is home to approximately 100,000 elephants, making it one of the largest elephant populations in Africa, a keystone species in Zimbabwe's ecosystems. Zimbabwe boasts an incredible array of wildlife, including majestic lions, graceful gazelles, towering giraffes, and breathtaking herds of wildebeest that roam its vast savannas. The country's diverse ecosystems also support other remarkable species like zebras, hippos, and crocodiles. Please see our prior video on this channel on indigenous African tribes poaching the elephants and decimating their populations. The Phoenicians. Britannica. Phoenicia, ancient region along the eastern coast of the Mediterranean that corresponds to modern Lebanon with adjoining parts of modern Syria and Israel. The Phoenicians, renowned for their maritime prowess, established a vast trading empire between 1550 and 300 BCE, dominating major parts of the Mediterranean and North African coast. Continuing, its location along major trade routes led its inhabitants, called Phoenicians, to become notable merchants, traders, and colonizers in the first millennium BCE. The chief cities of the Phoenicians included Sidon, Tyre, Byblos, and Beirut. These cities were vital hubs of trade, shipbuilding, and cultural exchanges. Key settlements in the Phoenician Empire included Cadiz and Malacca in Spain, as well as Carthage in present-day Tunisia, and various trading outposts throughout the Mediterranean. The Phoenicians established settlements along the southern coast of Spain starting around 800 BCE. They were drawn to the region for its rich mineral resources such as silver and tin, which were vital for their trade networks. Early explorers noted the resemblance of Great Zimbabwe's architecture to European medieval structures such as Castilian castles from Spain. This was due to its dry stone masonry and fortification-like design. This comparison was part of a broader discussion about the site's origins during the late 19th century. AtlasWonders.com, Great Zimbabwe, a fine and elaborate construction with a look more typical of medieval Europe. The resemblance of these fortifications to those of the castles built during the European Middle Ages. Phoenicians in Africa. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus mentions Phoenician sailors undertaking the first circumnavigation of Africa under the Egyptian pharaoh Necho II, hinting at the possibility of a Phoenician presence in East Africa. Glenn Marcos, in his book Phoenicians, discusses the extensive trade networks of the Phoenicians, including their ventures into the Red Sea, which might have extended towards regions like modern-day Ethiopia and Kenya. Richard Miles, in his blockbuster bestseller Carthago delenda est, explored Phoenician maritime prowess and extensive trade networks originating from North Africa, which might have extended to the Red Sea and potentially as far as East Africa. Rediscovery, 1871. AtlasOfWonders.com, the fortress that was out of place. The first explorers that rediscovered Great Zimbabwe for the Western world at the end of the 19th century, fine and elaborate construction with a look more typical of medieval Europe. Intrepid German explorer. Carl Mauch was a German adventurer, author, and geographer. Mauch was deeply spiritual and was primarily motivated by historical accounts from the Bible. Quick note, sometimes his name is spelled with a K rather than a C. Upon his arrival at Great Zimbabwe in 1871, Carl Mauch documented the discovery of various artifacts, including pottery and other items, which he interpreted as evidence of external influences on the site. NCESC.com, Great Zimbabwe 2025. Archaeological excavations have revealed the presence of Chinese pottery, Persian ceramics, Arab coins, and glass beads. Mauch was particularly struck by what he perceived to be Iron Age tools, which, as noted by Zimfield Guide, show some superficial similarities to Phoenician tools of the era. The cedar tree of Lebanon is native to the mountainous regions of the eastern Mediterranean, including Lebanon, Syria, and Turkey. It does not naturally grow in Zimbabwe or southern Africa. Mauch speculated that the timber he saw used in Great Zimbabwe's construction might have connections to Lebanon, drawing comparisons to the renowned cedars of ancient Phoenician architecture. Mauch wrote to his benefactor in Germany, Guten Tag, ich hoffe es geht Ihnen gut. It can be taken as a fact that the wood which we obtained actually is cedar wood. From this that it cannot come from anywhere else but from Lebanon. He continued, only the Phoenicians could have brought it here. Das ist alles. Auf Wiedersehen. African explorer James Theodore Bent and his legacy. James T. Bent was a British archaeologist, adventurer, and author. He made significant contributions to the early study of Great Zimbabwe. His book, The Ruined Cities of Mashonaland, 1892, brought international attention to the ruins. Bent's detailed descriptions and sketches of the structures provided valuable records for future researchers, though his interpretations were later challenged. Worldhistory.org. Bent concluded that the site had been built by Phoenicians and that Africans had only moved in once the Phoenicians had abandoned the place. Bent based his theory on the artifacts and carvings found, which were strikingly familiar to the artisanry of ancient Egyptian, Greek, and Roman art, as well as the Phoenicians. These Mediterranean civilizations frequently used bird motifs such as that found at Great Zimbabwe. And of course, that bird motif at Great Zimbabwe is now the national symbol. His wife, Mabel Bent, also played a key role in the expedition, acting as a photographer and chronicler, which added depth to their findings. Bent concluded that Great Zimbabwe was of non-African origin based on his interpretation of the site's architecture and artifacts. He specifically pointed to the dry stone masonry techniques, which he claimed bore similarities to styles found in ancient Semitic and Arabian cultures. Conical-shaped structures were a feature of Phoenician architecture and share a visual similarity with the iconic conical tower at Great Zimbabwe, though it is possible the connection is coincidental. Bent also pointed to trade goods found at the site, such as glass beads and porcelain, as evidence of external influence. The absence of identifiable Shona artifacts discovered along ancient trade routes in regions like China or Persia suggests that the Shona people may not have been highly skilled artisans. Instead, their contributions to these trade networks might have been limited to providing raw materials for Persian and Chinese traders. Historical accounts suggest that raw materials such as gold, copper, and ivory were exported from Great Zimbabwe to coastal trade hubs, where they were then transported to Persian, Arabian, and Chinese ports. There is no evidence of Shona-crafted artifacts being exported to these trade centers. Instead, the flow of goods was largely one way when it came to finished items. Precious artifacts, stone tools, and fragments of these items imported from abroad were found at Great Zimbabwe by Mauch, Bent, and other Western archaeologists over the years. McNaughton, possible Semitic origin for Great Zimbabwe, 2009. Bent was emphatic that whites had built the fortress. The builders were of a Semitic race and of Arabian origin, and quite excluded the possibility of any Negroid race. He also notes that Rhodesia's founder had visited the site. Mr. Cecil Rhodes also had another excavation done outside the walls of the great circular ruin, and the soil carefully sifted. In it were discovered a large number of gold beads, gold in thin sheets. The book, The Ancient Ruins of Rhodesia, was co-authored by Richard Nicklin Hall and W.G. Neal. It was first published in 1904 and explores the archaeological findings and interpretations of the ancient structures in Rhodesia. The authors make a strong case to back Bent's theories, suggesting that Great Zimbabwe may have been constructed by Europeans or Phoenicians. Page 5. His arguments in favor of the theory of the Subsahel-Arabian and Semitic origin of the ancient gold workers in this country are accepted in the main by many students of archaeology as being far the most probable. Page 112. The style of architecture of the later Zimbabwe's has been held to closely resemble that of some, at least, of those discovered in the old Phoenician colonies of the Mediterranean. Middle Easterners deep into Africa. Alternative accounts suggest that a possible Semitic people, referred to as the Aberlumba, may have predated the Shona and could have been responsible for constructing Great Zimbabwe. Andrew Anderson was an explorer and author who documented his experience in southern Africa during the late 19th century. His book, 25 Years in a Wagon in the Gold Regions of Africa, 1887, provides a vivid account of his travels, encounters with local tribes, and observations on the gold trade in the region. From David McNaughton, Semitic Origin for Ancient Zimbabwe, account compiled by Anderson, 1887. After visiting the area, we read, "The natives state that the gold was worked and the forts were built by white men, who once occupied this country and whom they call Aberlamba. Local Shona tribesmen were likely employed by the Semite overlords to protect the gold and precious metal reserves." Genetic traces of a forgotten population in Zimbabwe. Anderson's reference to the Aberlemba may reflect a misinterpretation of a term used for the Balemba people. The Lemba, who inhabit the Zimbabwe-South Africa border region, have oral traditions of a Semitic presence in Zimbabwe prior to the Shona, with potential links to the Phoenicians. A study from the University of Witwatersrand, released in 1996, confirmed that link. The authors found Y chromosome genetic markers in approximately 60 male Lemba tribe members for Middle Eastern origin. Paper. Our results suggest that less than or equal to 50% of the Lemba Y chromosomes are Semitic in origin. Approximately 40% are Negroid, and the ancestry of the remainder cannot be resolved. Mysterious inscriptions. Over the centuries, various explorers and traders have spoken of inscriptions on the stones at Great Zimbabwe. These include Bent, Mauch, Swahili traders, and the Portuguese chroniclers. Almost as if guided by divine providence, Theodore Bent urged that inscriptions would ultimately reveal the truth. Bent, Royal Geographic Society speech, 1889, quote, "I am perfectly certain that nothing definite will ever be found out about these forts until they are thoroughly dug out and investigated," end quote. Continuing, quote, "When perhaps some inscription will be found that will prove that both Mr. Mauch and I were quite wrong," end quote. Portuguese explorers in Southeast Africa. In the 16th century, Portuguese explorers seeking gold frequently visited the region. They reported that local Swahili and Moorish traders described the tribes inhabiting the region as indifferent and unaware of the magnificent fortress. Bem-vindo, uma boa história dos portugueses em África. Zimfieldguide.com. João dos Santos was a Portuguese Dominican missionary in Africa. The Portuguese completely ruled out any possibility of indigenous or Swahili origins for Great Zimbabwe. Drawing on accounts from Dos Santos and his interactions with Moorish and Swahili traders, author and archaeologist Peter Garlake suggests that Great Zimbabwe may have had an inscription on the fort during their era of Portuguese exploration. One plausible scenario in the years following the Portuguese voyages to the region that the inscription mentioned by them and the traders was removed by local villagers, bandits, or looters. Rhodesian whites surrender their homeland. In 1980, Mugabe and his Marxist Revolutionary Party seized power from the Rhodesian White Majority Party. Years of retribution against the native white Rhodesians followed. The white population dropped dramatically from approximately 300,000 to around 30,000 over the subsequent years, driven by political, social, and economic changes. The Zimbabwe economy took a nosedive. Inflation soared to unprecedented levels in Zimbabwe, marking one of the highest rates ever recorded in Africa, leading to widespread panic among politicians and economic stakeholders. Great Zimbabwe's ruins and other national monuments have been subjected to alteration or damage over the centuries. As an act of defiance against colonialism, African nationalists may have deliberately altered or damaged parts of the ruins, potentially erasing traces of ancient foreign presence. Such actions could have stemmed from a desire to reshape the narrative of Great Zimbabwe's origins, aligning with specific agendas. Under the Mugabe regime, permits for Western archaeologists have been severely restricted. Zimbabwe's archaeological regulations are particularly stringent and are governed by the National Museums and Monuments Act, which was developed during the Mugabe regime. Western archaeologists and other researchers are entirely excluded from overseeing the Great Zimbabwe site, leaving no opportunity to independently monitor its condition or confirm potential acts of neglect or damage. The true story of who built Great Zimbabwe, the purpose of its grandeur, and why it was constructed may forever remain shrouded in mystery. Thank you for watching. It is very likely we will return to this topic in future videos. See you soon.